Welcome, travelers. I'm Josh.
And I'm Lee Wanika, and this is Tabletop Journeys, where we will be your not-so-humble guides on the quest for RPG adventures.
All right, welcome everybody to this week's episode of Tabletop Journeys. Mr. Michael Ross, Mr. Lee Wanika Miller, good evening, gentlemen, as we show off our copies of the 2024 Monster Manual. All three of us with the limited edition copies with nice. And still missing the Beholder art just a little bit. So, but hey, Lee Wanika, how are you doing tonight, sir? How are things down in the wonderful state of Connecticut?
They are great. At the time of recording, still prepping for the game or for the convention and doing some wonderful things as far as that goes, and really excited to really dive right into the deep end of the pool with the Monster Manual.
Nice. Excellent. How are things in the soon-to-be snowy state of Western Kentucky, Mr. Ross?
Yeah, doing well. Personally, things are good. I think I've told you, like, wife's got COVID. We're expecting some snow, which for you is nothing, but for us is traumatic. It shuts the whole state down. Yeah. But I am also gearing up for our faculty retreat, which is now next week. So I will be leaving on Thursday, heading to Grand Rapids. I think last count we had upwards of 18 people that were going to go to this one. Nice. We are going to have an absolute blast. I am so looking forward to it.
One of these days, when I'm permitted to travel out of the state for a prolonged period of time, not allowed. Sorry, that's the wrong word. It's not allowed. Yeah. It's when I am able to go ahead and travel out of the state for a prolonged period of time. Those faculty retreats sound like a whole lot of fun. So I want to make sure I get out there.
So they're so much fun. So we're pretty much looking forward to that. And then my son ran his first session of a new campaign he's been wanting to run based on the Firefly show that we just watched like a couple weeks ago. And he settled on Star Wars FFG. So he had his first session of that last night, and it seemed to go well. Too much time building characters. He won't listen to me when it comes to that, but he had fun. Players had fun. So again, obviously he did it right.
Yep. Excellent.
Absolutely.
Excellent. That's fantastic. Man, Firefly. I cannot wait to go ahead and share. Like, I remember what all this was like with Holden, my older son, showing him all of these things for the first time. I'm really looking forward to. I hope that my daughter, who's now 2, I hope that she has a taste for all things geeky also. Because that
some of them they hit, some of them don't. But they both really liked Firefly. I think we hit at the right time, and they absolutely just had a great time with it. So yeah, good.
Yep.
I know my older daughter really liked Stargate SG-1. A lot of her efforts in school and in the sciences and in STEM field really came from really following Amanda Tapping's character, Samantha Carter, and the few episodes of B5 that she watched. It was not a show she was great about, but she really did like Ivanova. And, strong female characters for a dad of daughters is an amazing thing to put on the screen in front of them and have them be celebrated. So I was really pleased with that.
Yep. That is yes. I'll just say yes. Let's just call it that. So
there's a bunch of people in the coffee shop doing this.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. So if any of you tuned into our live show from what is now about a week and a half ago, we were talking very much about this episode that's coming out tonight, where we're going to be talking in a little bit more depth about the 2024 Monster Manual. And we're going to kind of take a specific bunch of points to go ahead and kind of break them out to kind of frame what this book is and what this book is not, and why that is either okay or why we wish that it was something different and all of that sort of stuff. So this is going to kind of be part 1 of our episode on the Monster Manual here, and then we're also going to the three of us have all picked monsters behind the scenes. I like how Michael looked behind him like as if there's one. Yeah, exactly. Hopefully your monster is not behind you, because boy, that's man alive.
Are you purposely queuing up the Rihanna song? There's a monster in my. No,
that's not what she's talking about.
I'm pretty sure she's not.
That's not what she's talking about. Yeah, where was I? Totally derailed. Yeah. So next episode. That's right. Next week.
Next train.
the three of us are going to go ahead and break out a little monster comparison between 2014, talk about why they're different in 2024, talk about whether or not we like those changes, don't like those changes, think that they were useful, think that they were silly, because I think that they could be all over the map. Because while I love this book, I think that it is fair to say that while this is, like I said in the previous episode, a more complete monster manual than the 2014 book, I think that some of the choices can sometimes be a little bit over the map, and we're going to kind of get into some of those choices and get into our thoughts on that tonight. So without further ado, let me go ahead and shift screens again, and we'll get into our fancy presentation screen, and we dive into our first topic tonight, and that is the monster type shifting, the removal of non-NPC humanoids, and the recategorization of many monsters. And let me just go ahead. I'm going to dive into this one a little bit here, because man, has there been an awful lot of hullabaloo about this particular topic. And I think that a lot of it is a lot of noise. I think that people that are complaining about the goblins becoming fey, I think that people that are complaining about how there are certain races that are, because they're playable, they're no longer monsters, all that sort of stuff. I think it is better. I think the changes that they made are more. It's hard to go ahead and say accurate when you're talking about fictitious monsters in a fantasy world, but I think that they're more appropriate. Goblins are fey, and goblins they have that fey mischievousness about them in the way that they should be played. It's probably a better answer than calling them humanoids at the end of the day. And so really, I think, I think that the reason why people are complaining about this is because they're looking at it from a 2014 rules point of view and saying, I now have spells that don't work on goblinoids because now they're fey. I can't charm them. I can't put them to sleep. I can't do all those things because now they're fey. They've just buffed goblins and debuffed me. Why could they do? And I think, shuffle off.
I think that is definitely part of the issue for some of the folks. And to that I say, then you'll learn to play more tactically. That doesn't mean goblins are impossible to beat. That doesn't mean that these things can't be beaten. It does mean there's not an easy cheat code. I mean, there was a time where it used to be, here's a bunch of goblins, friends, thank you, move along. All it took is a standard roll from a GM and a decent roll from a player, and threat eliminated. Now it's a little harder. Now you got to figure something out. Now the goblins you fight could be friends, they could be enemies, because they're capricious, they're crafty, they're all these other things that technically they always were. Now there's just a mechanical tag that emphasizes that point, and I think that's fine. I said it in the live that we did, that some of the choices for what things changed to, I could take them or leave them, but the fact that they changed, I'm fine with. Is that the best change? Maybe not. Would I make a different change? Maybe I would, maybe I won't. And in a homebrew game, maybe I would do that. Maybe lizard folk are celestials as well, like beast folk, instead of elementals. I could make that choice. Maybe Aarakocra are going to be, beast folk, or like mini beast lords versus elementals. There are things that I might change that to, but the fact that they're no longer humanoid almost releases this creative energy that for the world I'm building and the cosmology that I choose to build, I can now manipulate. I now see that it's easier, and maybe as a GM I always knew that, but it is somewhat freeing to have mechanical support for saying, in your world, this is no longer part of this monster group. This is now this monster group. Yeah. So now this fits your story, your narrative. And the fact that it has been done within the greater scope of the official game is a license to say we can do this. Now, that if I did that in a game, I am obligated to talk about that in my session 0. Everybody grab their beverage.
Drink. I really will.
Before the tariffs, I'm grabbing my Clearly Canadian. Thank you. Sorry. I'm trying not to go there. Josh, I've been good. I've been good.
But I will intercept this tirade and just say that I think that it's a good choice. There are some weird mini choices, like you said, like Aarakocra as elemental.
Yeah.
Not quite intuitive. I kind of get how they got there, but I actually think goblins as Fae is actually pretty inspired. I think that opens up ways to play them that is way more interesting than humanoid. And I also think that this is a personal choice, a subjective thing, but I like the idea that these other species that may or may not still be playable in certain games, whatever, being more than just humanoids with a different skin is the better choice for the game. And I like it. I think overall, I think it's a good, I don't know that it's a choice I think had to be made in some cases, but I think it's a good choice and I'm glad they made it.
Let us also
absolutely.
celebrate the fact that they did not try to go ahead and create an in-game reason why goblinoids switched from humanoid to Fae. They just said goblinoids are Fae and just called it like, this is a change. It's just a change. Let us thank the role-playing gods above that or below, whichever
below,
direction you want to
or
go.
to the side,
that they did not try to go ahead and make some fantastical story about why that happened.
Yeah.
Mobius loop.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
David Bowie would agree goblins are Fae.
Yeah, period.
Yes.
So,
and if David Bowie agrees. No, I will also say this. One of the things that Perkins said in one of his various commercials was that if you're using the 2014s and a player wants to play one of these races, they would still be considered a humanoid. The moment a player takes control of a character, they are now a humanoid because they are no longer in this monster category.
Yep.
So if this does not eliminate anything that's come before, does that mean they're going to necessarily give us rules to do so? Probably not. You're just going to have to use the old rules and kind of put that together. But if you really wanted to play Boblin the Goblin, like you used to, because you switched to 2024 in the middle of a campaign, advice that I had specifically said don't do. But if that's what you wanted to do at your table, have at it. If everybody agrees, have fun. You're doing it right. But if you do that, you just got to use the old rules to make that happen. They're just not going to give you the new rules to do that as a player character currently. Now, there might be a campaign world that is published a year from now, 3 years from now, that does.
Yep.
And then you could use that. But for right now, with what we have, there's ways to do it if you want to. But the suggestion is there's plenty of other things you can use at this time.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good thing. Not to mention eliminating the problematic issues of, having humanoids be species enemies and all of these other things.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right. Let's slide on to number 2 here. So number 2 is that the fact that there are no monster creation rules. Michael, you talked about this on the previous episode that you find it weird that they didn't include them.
Yeah. I would never use them anyways. I don't care that they're not there. I think it's weird that they're not.
So elaborate on that a little. So what is it that you find so weird about that? Because I will be honest, Lewanika and I, in one of our innumerable phone calls when, and I'm driving to go pick up furniture or driving home from Pennsylvania, whatever, we went around and around on this because I really I just don't find this that big a deal. And I am perplexed by those that do. So what's so weird about it? Why is it so weird?
I think that one of the things about when you're a DM and you're crafting your world, like we want our DMs to have all these tools to build the world the way they see fit and craft these adventures, these worlds, these stories together. And I think creating your own monster is just part and parcel with that. It is something that, like, if you think about the game designers that have gone on to do other things in this space, many of them sort of cut their teeth on building their own monsters and taking. So I guess the side point I'm trying to make is I think it makes more sense to have reskinning rules than creation rules. But it's just weird to me that there are no creation or reskinning rules in this book, because I think that there's so many creators out there, whether it be homebrew, whatever, that's kind of how they learn the game by building monsters. I think it's something we all go through. And at my point in my career, I don't create monsters anymore. I reskin things. I think that's a much easier way to do it. Yeah. But I just find it weird that they didn't put either in this book.
Yeah, I guess I hear that. I hear what it is that you're saying. I guess so. I think a couple things. I think one, maybe I just do reskinning also. I'm trying to think of the difference between those two processes and trying to go ahead and see which one I do more. And reskinning basically is taking a monster that has an ability that you like and then making that a different monster, but keeping kind of the ability, or kind of vice versa. Like, kind of like,
Yeah.
hey, if it's a fire genasi, I can make it a water genasi and do this instead. That kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
So maybe I do a lot more of that than I kind of let on, as opposed to kind of creating custom mechanics. But even for our content creation stuff, like we create custom mechanics all the time. So I like, I guess that's why like creature creation rules really never did anything for me, because it's like nothing that we're doing. Either I'm doing things that are so simple and reskinning so that I don't engage with them at that point, or I'm doing things so advanced and complicated they're beyond them. So kind of like hitting that, like that 60% of use cases in the middle really never really kind of factored into me. But kind of beyond that also, I hope that the situation is not that the speculation that they are trying to make third-party content creation less attractive or less easy. I hope that that's not true. I hope that that's not why this happened. But part of me is wondering if it is, and that would make me sad. They keep saying on one level that, that they want to continue to go ahead and support the content creation community and everything like that. But I think you said it right in your answer. It's like a lot of people that went on to other things and are making a lot of money doing things that are or not, that either touch 5e or whatever, or they're kind of doing their own thing, started with making monsters and putting them on D&D, on DM's Guild and stuff like that. Like, so, are we seeing a situation where they're shifting away from making third-party content creation easier? I hope not, but yeah, maybe there might be some smoke there.
I don't
So-
feel like that's part of the equation, but it certainly might be.
Yeah.
But I don't understand. And if someone could probably explain to me in 2 sentences, and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But right now, I'm not seeing the vision of why not to have them there, other than, as I said, the other one, because the monsters in the book don't fit a methodology. There is no methodology they could give us because they don't follow them themselves. And so many of the monsters in this book would break them that it would seem like weird. But again, I don't know. I'm sorry, Lenica, what were you saying, sir?
Yeah, so I had an interesting take, and Josh, we, as you alluded to, we have spoken many times on this, and you'll have to, when I'm done with this bit, let me know whether or not I backtracked or reversed my original thoughts on this. But I no longer think the rules are not in the book. I think what they did do, however, is embed them and not explicitly state them. And if you remember in the live, I made a comment about that I think it's it was a different topic, but like it's in there, it's just not really called out well. And I think that's to their detriment. Because if you look at that first chapter and you scroll down through the various topics, and I'm looking at D&D Beyond as we're talking, so I can kind of follow along. But you go through the hit points, the speed, the ability scores, when they break down the actual stat block thing, and they talk about each individual piece, and then they give you a bunch of different tables at each individual piece. They tell you what the XP is for each of the CRs. They tell you all these things. They're not explicitly telling you where you get these different things. And there is some guidance as to monsters of a given CR should do around X damage. I believe that was in the DMG, if I recall correctly. But your proficiency bonus by CR is there. They talk about traits and how that works. There's a little breakout where it says running a monster. We talked about it in the live about hit with your recharge, hit with your multi-attack, always use the heaviest thing you got at every occasion. All of that. That's all in how to build a monster in some fashion. Is it explicitly stated? Step 1, step 2, step 3? No, but it's actually all here. It's just not easy. So I think there's a real sweet spot between it's not here and it is here. And what Josh said is, are they making it more difficult for creators? I'm like, yeah, I think they are trying to make it a little more obtuse, because the volume of content creators that said it's not in the book. And I'm talking some highly qualified, really like visionaries in our industry have said it's not in the book. But I'm looking at it, I'm like, if this isn't it, while not called out explicitly, what else do you need to make it it? And I can't find, I sat here most of today after reading that very thoroughly, read it on paper once, in my earbuds while I'm doing things to kind of really absorb this book in preparation for a recording session. And I'm like, everything that you and I have been speaking about for 3 or 4 weeks as we develop our own methodology for tabletop journeys is here. And it's in this first chapter. It's just not called out of as, here's how you build a monster. So my biggest hot take from the entire book is, I think everybody's wrong. How to build a monster is here. It's just hidden within the line and verse.
So this is where we need that graphic of Charlie from that movie with the murder board, you know.
Grab the murder
there. They've been there the whole time.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, the smoking man's in the back of the corner.
Yeah.
It's always been.
That's
I mean, if I'm wrong, call me out. And I do believe that's a full reversal on what I've been saying for about a month.
You'd been sipping the Kool-Aid pretty liberally for the last month.
Yeah.
That is definitely a reversal, and that's okay because I think as someone who has, like I alluded to in the last video here, kind of worked on building a methodology. I can see that there are some things that I'm running into trying to build a methodology that are not covered well in here. The biggest is spellcasting. Spellcasting to get right on a monster stat block is hard.
Hot take. Monsters shouldn't cast spells. 100% monsters should not cast spells.
Ooh. So should they just have spell abilities? Like
they should just have abilities that work limitedly to create a certain effect, because I think Lena touched on this before. It makes it so much harder to run monsters, and you have to then, they made the decision to not include those rules in the stat blocks. If you just say, it has this ability, which is essentially like magic missile, or it has this ability, which is essentially like flame strike. So much easier to run. The stat blocks would be so much cleaner.
Sure.
I'm sorry. 4th edition got this right.
So then, okay,
I agree.
100% 4th edition got that right.
Before we deviate from that point, then,
okay,
how does counterspell work in that kind of a situation?
That's the problem. But I think it could just simply be a line. There's like a little symbol. Is it counterspellable or not? And it goes in there. And then part of the fun for the players is to figure out if it works or not.
Yep.
And that becomes strategy. It becomes a player knowledge. Oh, I fought these things before. Counterspell doesn't work when it does this, but this monster does. Yeah. I think it's fine. Yep. As long as if you have a jerk DM, it's going to be a jerk DM anyways. But if you have a good DM, then it's going to be fun to figure that part out.
We're in agreement on that point. Right. Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Luminika, you were saying?
Yeah, I was going to just jump on the Michael Ross absolutely knows what the heck he's talking about bandwagon, because I am telling you, that's how I feel about it. Like, I don't use those spells. Now, I do think that a spell book with specific spells in it needs to be in gear, and that way the gear section. So if you're doing an NPC spellcaster or a demon who has their Necronomicon or whatever, and it has certain spells in it, by all means, list the spells that are in the book, but put that book in the gear. It's not happening during combat. He's got some ritual that like raises the dead for every graveyard for 15 miles. Awesome. Put it in the gear. That's the treasure at the end of the adventure. Yep. And I don't think it's coming up in today's episode. It's not on the run sheet, but I think that one of the things that I think they're a little weaker on in the book was the treasure stuff. I think they got very nebulous. I understand why they did it. There's page count issues. There's a whole bunch of good reasons for it. But I do think that in some cases they were a little too nebulous, where some specificity may have been helpful.
Again, I think that people are looking to the DMG for that clarification. Yep. And the DMG was also very nebulous on treasure. Like I went to go award my home game treasure, not this past session, but the session before. So I grabbed my copy of the 2024 DMG and I said, what do they get for treasure? And I was like, there's really actually not that much guidance in here at all. And we'd already recorded the episode on treasure, so I couldn't backtrack and say, hey, this actually isn't that good. This actually isn't that useful unless I want to give the magic items. And then it's super useful, but guidance on treasure was not great.
Yeah, they did a good thing, which I think is cool, and I think third-party content creators can really expand on this, and that we've got room to work, right?
Yep.
They've got treasure and they've got gear. Gear can be taken with them, treasure can be taken with them, and they did a neat thing where if they've got a special weapon that has some flavor or some weird damage type that is unique to the monster, you take it, it doesn't do that thing unless the GM has specifically said it does. The default is it does the cool thing because it's infused with whatever the monster is.
Right.
So, you steal the angel sword, it's no longer doing angel radiant damage. It's just a sword with really cool writing. So I think those are some neat elements that are in there, and they've given content creators such as ourselves a lot of good room to work, because now we can, when we build stat blocks, add more gear that's steered towards the adventure we're writing.
Yep.
So we can add standard gear, we can add these different things, and then lean into the the DMG for the one or two standout items within the treasure.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of cool. I think I'm okay with that. But like a couple of the other things, now this is the third time I'm going to say it, I really wish it was more explicitly called out. I think it's a good system. It wasn't spelled out easily enough. Somebody who's been playing D&D for a long time is looking for a thing that's not quite here anymore, that's actually a bit more elegant, but nobody's telling them that it is. They're looking for something that they're not going to find exactly, and they'll just be frustrated. I think that's part of what went wrong with 4th edition is they didn't do a great job of telegraphing and telling us what they were doing. They just expected us to pick it up and agree.
Yep.
And we've proven that doesn't work.
Yep. All right. Topic number 3 on the list: retooled CR levels. I think we passed this one pretty good in our previous episode.
Yeah.
But
But
the
just the
retooled
thing
CR levels are real. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I wanted to kind of restate a little bit of what I said there is that I don't think CR is an imperfect tool. I'm glad it exists, but it should not be used more than like rough estimates. Like a CR4 is not really a CR4 because that CR is based on party level.
Right.
And your party levels can be wildly disparate. You could have the same 4 players play 4 different characters that are different, species and class combinations, different standard array or rolled. So some people might all have, 17 to 12, and 3 other parties might have 18s and they're all +3 stats or whatever. What magic items they have, what spells they have prepared, and how good they are at working together, their system mastery. Those are completely different numbers. And until you can factor in the accurate party level, then CR will never be more than a rough estimate.
Yeah.
And then you have like monster compatibility. Like I have this CR4 and this CR4 and put them together could be very different than this CR5 and this CR3 because they have the way they work together and synergize. So for me personally, CR is just nonsense. I don't even care about it because I don't think it really works. But everything I've understood about this book is they've done a better job because they basically got it closer, but it's still not accurate, and it's never going to be.
Yeah, they dialed it in. Yeah, they dialed it in quite a bit better than it had been, and I think it was absolutely not good previously. They dialed this in, like 2014 required me to develop a minion system so I could handle the variances, right? Mm-hmm. We sell that on the PDF of that on Drive-Thru-RPG.
Minions are cool.
We've done episodes on it, and I will still be using them in 2024 because they're fun and they provide the fantasy that players want, right?
They're a great answer, yeah.
You want to be able to take out swaths of enemies, so give them swaths of enemies that can be
swaths of enemies.
Yeah.
That said, the real impetus was because I had zero ability to properly dial in an encounter I created. I couldn't figure it out. So I started using minions.
So you had a different dial that you could do. It's like, okay, here's my monster and here's my minions. And if it's going really, really well, those minions can get taken out. If it's going really, really hard, you created an in-game dial or
That dial,
lever.
turn it to the right, it gets lower. Turn it to the left, it gets higher.
Correct. Exactly. Standard
universal
dial methodology. But
we're on
that is
video,
not,
so there's things that are not happening right now.
But that is not a DM 101 ability. You can do that. I have confidence Josh could do that. I probably could do that and do it fairly well. But you're brand new. I saw this game Critical Role, or my buddies play it. I want to play it. They can't do that. Right. And CR is the tool we are telling them to use, and it fundamentally doesn't work.
Yeah, it absolutely did not. And I think this is better, but it is absolutely
still
also
better.
Not perfect. And like Michael said, the synergy and the interaction between what the enemies are doing and the players are doing. We did the Druid episode, and Michael picked a Druid that did all ice damage. And then we fought something that was resistant or immune to ice damage. Yeah. That's the kind of thing that can happen. And the opposite of that is, what if he chose fire damage and the thing was vulnerable to fire, right?
Yep, sure.
Now, that CR, which would have been perfect, is now significantly less. Again, minions help. Now I just have more minions, right? Yep. But so, not to harp on it, but essentially it's an imperfect system. It is more art than science. So much of this game is science, but so much more is art. Yeah. This happens to be art. I do think they got a finer edge. Their penciling and their ink work was much better in this book than it was in the previous. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think that really the number that you need to keep in mind as a DM is how many rounds is this monster going to survive against your party, but for that, you need so much more information than calculating CR. You need to know what the average damage output of each player is. You need to know what their chance of hitting this particular monster is, that kind of thing. And then kind of like, if it's 3 rounds, it's easy. If it's 5 rounds, it's medium. If it's 7 or more rounds, then it's going to be hard. If it's 10 rounds, it's potentially deadly. Like that kind of thing. What I mean? And that's really the number that you need to know more than anything else. And CR tries to do that, tries to balance that out a little bit. And I think that the encounter rules in the DMG did better at that, saying, if you have a party of this average level, here is your XP budget for this type of thing. And that could mean 100 skeletons, or it could mean 1 vampire lord, 1 red dragon, whatever, but so you make that decision as a
I'd
DM.
rather go against 100 skeletons.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think this
if that dragon hits anything like the green one did, made of skeletons.
Yeah.
But it should be a range. It shouldn't be your CR should be a CR range of like 3 to 5. And then because the good news is, as a DM, you don't have to figure out every possible combination. You just got to worry about the one in front of you. Right. So the first time you play, you're going to learn information about your characters, and assuming you don't TPK them, the next time you play, you're like, oh, they did this really well, or they're fire-based, or whatever the case may be. So you can start to fine-tune how CR works for you. So I'm not saying get rid of it. I'm just saying it is only a guideline that gets hazy quickly.
Oh, and certainly at higher levels, CR breaks down real fast.
Yeah.
All right, let's get on to our 4th topic here. So this is the one that I thought was particularly kind of spicy, but I having, again, been doing some work on creating monster stat blocks, I figured this one out, why this happens. And that was the backtrack on putting action or action economy spells in the action economy portion of the stat block. Now, Michael, you had the spicy take earlier that monsters shouldn't be casting spells in the first place.
Solves that problem real quick, don't it?
Solves that problem real fast, right? Exactly, because like anything that they do that is remotely magical is in the stat block. And I will say that the reason, I don't know. I'm just going to go ahead and come out and say it. The reason why we're grappling with this is because we are content creators and we are writing books with custom monsters in them and want to make monsters that feel like they are 2024 monsters. So we've been working on a methodology. We've been working on how to go ahead and do this. And Lewanika and I are both on the same page that action economy spells should be in the action economy portion of the stat block.
Period.
Here's why that doesn't work. When I downloaded the list of 320 spells from the D&D API that you can go ahead and access and pulls all their information in, way too many of their descriptions are way too big to put into a stat block. Like you just can't. You cannot put 1,000 character spell description in a stat block. unbalances that stat block from a visual and functional and usability point of view, immensely. So really what the answer to that is, and Luinick, I know you had alluded to the fact that you have another answer, so I actually want to hear what your answer is to this, because the only answer that I came up with was basically to then go through those 320 spells and rewrite all of their descriptions so that they are way, way shorter, so that they make sense in the stat block. And I also think, Michael, your point about the fact that if it is a spell and it is in my stat block, it has to go ahead and have some kind of an indicator that says that this is applicable for counterspell, because otherwise otherwise counterspell is now a useless spell for anybody to take. And that is a for real consideration. So
yeah, 100. And that's maybe one of the bigger reasons why they didn't get rid of it. But I think from a game standpoint, it makes so much more sense just to get away with that completely. I have a not a hot take, but I have a question, but I want Leonika to go first.
Yeah, so oddly, my answer is a blend of what both of you said. So first of all, I think what you just said, Josh, is exactly what they did in Morgan Cadence. That's why spell attack, if you look at Kellic in that book or some of the others that came out of those, basically they didn't give them magic missile. They gave them whatever the
it was fireball. They didn't give them fireball. They gave them this flame strike, fire strike ability that
fire strike or whatever it was.
Basically, but they also did fireball by another name.
Yeah, it was like the same damage or very similar damage, whatever the case may be. And there was a magic missile one as well. So my answer is twofold. One, yes, do that, and two, just say this is a spell casting ability. Like you say, cast the spell Fire Strike or Flame Orb or whatever. You don't have to do those pounds of text because you're giving it a different thing. You're like, look, I want this guy to do magic missile. What's important in the stat block that we need to know about magic missile? Do we really want to go through the difficulty of rolling 4 different hits? Not in the stat block, you sure as heck don't. So let's just do 1 hit, 1 target, this. If he's on a critical, it hits an additional number of targets per proficiency bonus. Done and done. That's tight. Call it what you want to call it, and then say this is casting a spell, and it's counterable.
Yeah. Well, we have magic action now. This is a magic action.
Yeah, this is a magic action, and then you just say any magic action
can be counterspelled.
Can be countered. Now, I will say 2024 rules, that is not a true statement. So we may have to come up with a different term for that. But you could just say this is this type of action, and this type of action is always counterable. And I think that is the way to do that.
Yeah, the problem there is that, and again, I think we are dancing into the right solution, right? The problem is that when you get into, again, even like relatively common spells that have any degree of complexity, like if they do more than one thing, right, like what do you do? Do you put that into what's the spell that I was thinking about the other day? It was I don't even remember, but it was comprehend languages or slow or something like that. But it's basically like, it was alter self, right? Alter self has 3 different things that you can do. 2 of them cost actions. 1 of them does not. And the 2 actions are either they get a bump to their movement, or they can go ahead and give themselves basically a claw weapon, right? And so the discussion was, well, is this actually a damage dealing spell or not? And it's like, well, it gives me a weapon, but it doesn't really deal damage itself. And how do I account for the fact that Alter Self, one spell that I only get to cast once a day, actually lets me do 3 different things? Do I give myself 3 actions and say you have to go ahead and pick between these 3? Do I, so like that's the kind of complexity that I think it breaks this down, and that's that is a problem from a structural point of view, rather than saying mechanical, from a structural point of view of building the stat block. If I only get to go ahead and do one of these 3 things once a day, I have to put them in the same thing, or it doesn't make sense.
So here's where
you played Dragonbane.
No, not yet.
So
I did sit in on a great panel at a Catacomb with one of the lead Jonathan writers for it. Yeah, amazing panel. Amazing.
It's a really fun game. I'm really liking it. But one of the things that it does for monsters, which is not D&D, we can't do this, but just put it in your head. when you're fighting a monster in Dragonbane, it does not roll to hit. It just hits. You have a die chart to tell you what it does. So you're fighting a giant spider. It rolls, I think it's a D6. On a D4, it webs 2 characters. On a D5, it bites. On a D6, it bites and poisons, whatever the case may be, right? But if you're fighting an NPC, you use the normal rules that you would use for combat against that kind of thing. I think monsters in D&D could be similar, where if you're fighting like a spell casting NPC, then they work like a character. They have spells, they have everything like everything else. If they're not, they're a monster and they get the spell-like abilities. And I think that's a distinction that is easy enough to do in D&D, and just say, this thing has spell actions, flame strike that does like D4 damage, and this is a NPC that has a spell book and uses the same spells as a player would, and those are different things.
I would also go so far as to say they are actually partially following that. Knowing now that that's in Dragonbane, that makes a lot of sense, because Josh had some consternation when I was explaining that things in 2014 that you used to have to hit, and then the target had to roll a save, that most creatures do not do that anymore. If you successfully hit, they automatically get the condition or whatever the extra effect is. There's no second roll involved. And now that I have heard what you said about Dragonbane, now I know where that design element came from. So they have actually shifted into that type of system. They just didn't go all the way. And now that makes a lot more sense and frames that a lot better in my head. I was fine with it because it's just faster and easier to run at the table. But I had no idea where it came from, and I was questioning where it came from. Now I get it, and it makes a lot of sense. But I think, Josh, what I have done mentally in what has alleviated the difficulty of the question you posed is I've divorced myself from the need for anything in the stat block to be exactly like the player version. So I don't care if Alter Self does 3 things. I'm writing a monster. Which of those 3 things do I want it to do? I'm going to give it an action to do one. I'm going to give it an action to the other, and an action to do the third. It doesn't have to be a spell. And I can say they could all be counterable, or maybe they're not. I don't care. What matters is it's separated and easy to read. There should be nothing in that stat block that has 3 different options. Every called out line item should be one thing. That way I, as a GM, can say, I've got a stat block. It's a tier 1 kind of enemy. I'm talking CR 0 through 3. None of those, not any one of those things, should be 3 different things happening.
Yeah, I agree.
If I'm
also
doing
think
tier
counterspells,
4, maybe.
Yeah. And
then I can say this is counterspellable as though it were level X or level Y. Yeah. That to me is fine.
I think
that's how I would separate
work on less stuff. Sorry.
Yeah. It does continue to break down. It really does. Like, if you look at the spell Cloud Kill, right, which is a fairly mundane spell block at the end of the day, right? You create a cloud, it has a given size, it does certain effects, and you can move it as a bonus action. So now, so how am I putting that in a stat block?
Again, I'm a GM. Right. So I'm a GM, and the answer to me is, like the Green Dragon, I would just eliminate the fact that it moves. I would give it a recharge, and he can put it in a spot, and I might make it a little larger. Done. I would not give it the things to make it more complicated to run.
Yep. Or just say, unless the characters specifically group up, and this could be like an early section, pick 3.
Yeah.
And those are the 3 that are affected. And the shape is however it needs to be to affect those 3.
That's fair.
As a layer action in 2014 and whatnot, if you're fighting a red dragon and you're in its layer 2014 dragon, you do on a D20, pick a spot in your layer, and everybody there makes a dex save. Done.
Yep.
I would not make that more complicated than it has to be. So I think the answer is you simply give it. That spell has a damage, and it has an area effect, and it has a damage, and it has a length of time it exists. That's all we really need to know from a stat block. And that's all I would put in that.
Yeah.
So I think, and to me, that is what you're talking about, which is if there's a spell I like, I rewrite that one. Out of the 500 and some odd spells, I don't know if there's a lot of value in putting all of them there necessarily, but maybe a topic for other discussions because of what we were trying to work on. There is some work that might need to be done, but the problem is if you're playing digitally, none of this is even all that difficult because you click on the button, you can see what it does. The problem breaks down when you're playing physically at the table.
Yeah.
And, I might be building a monster on a digital tool because it's easier, faster to build it and prep. But the reality is I still needed to output to something that I can take to a table.
Yep.
So
at the end of the day, in my opinion, the monsters are there to be defeated.
Yep.
They're just supposed to be fun and interesting, and making them easier to run as the DM is more important than giving them equitable abilities that make sense in the world. Like, I think monsters should cheat. I think monsters should break the rules in every possible way to make them easier and more fun to encounter at the table. I don't, as a player, I'm never going to go, wait, they shouldn't be able. No. If you're having that conversation, you've already screwed up somewhere else along the line because the player isn't having enough fun that they're starting to question those things.
I mean, honestly, I expect the DM to let me swing on a chandelier whether there's a specific action for it or not.
100%.
And I fully expect that the DM's going to have that monster jump through a bookcase at me too and pull me through the drywall. How could you tell where I was? Does it freaking matter?
Yeah.
What's cool is
if you're a
who's got pulled through the wall.
You can swing on the chandelier. Otherwise, you need to make an athletics check. That's
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. I mean, I think I think we have beaten this one today. And here's the thing: is that at the end of the day, all three of us in our previous episode said probably the most complete monsters manual that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Probably a really, really good book. So, how nice is it that we can go ahead and look at a really, really good book, a book that we really, really enjoy, and say, no, man, there's a lot of things to go ahead and discuss about the way that they put this together. And we didn't even cover the fact that they, why they may have changed up the way that the alphabet works. I mean, that's, so.
Well, it with the other issues we talked about, the organization is a bit of a nothing burger and is recovered really fast.
Exactly.
It's great for digital. It sucks for real life.
Well,
Thanks.
Not even. This is a research manual. I look, it has a list. I can find it.
This tells me that we should do a bonus episode on Dragonbane. I think.
Let's do it.
Yes,
I would love to. Yeah.
Yep. There's so much about that game I think super interesting and cool, and there's design elements, and I like the idea of having the monster matrix where this is what it does. I just roll and that's what it does. Like, I think that's a cool concept to maybe to integrate into D&D in some ways.
I loved it. Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, that is our episode for tonight. Reminder, as always, please like and subscribe wherever you're listening to us, on Spotify, on YouTube, on iTunes, wherever you're happening to do it. If you want to get notifications of every single time that we put out there, we put out at least 2 episodes a week, a bunch of live stuff over on our YouTube channel with Michael and Chris Billow and all that. So, like to go ahead and see all that stuff happening. There's a bunch of content coming out right now. We'd love to go ahead and have you be a part of it. Please leave your comments down below. If you're on Spotify, please respond to the poll question too. We've been starting to go ahead and plug those in also. I don't know what tonight's going to be. We'll figure it out when I queue up the episode.
Should we do a Dragonbane episode? Yes.
Should we do a Dragonbane episode?
Yeah. Should we do a Dragonbane episode?
Yeah. And there would be 3 answers: yes, yes, and hell yes. We'll kind of see. We'll go from there.
There might be a 4th. What the heck took you so long?
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
I would also say be sure to check us out on all of our socials, because where Tabletop Journeys will be live throughout 2025 will start to appear there. We're going to start to let you know. There's a bunch of convention appearances coming up, and we want to make sure that you are all aware and in the know. So if you're in an area where we're going to be playing live, you have a chance to come down and throw some dice with us. I would love to have everybody with us.
We want you to play some of our brand new material that's going to be coming out later this year. So please check out that. And also, if you would love to support the show, we would love it if you would support the show. We'd love you to go check out www.patreon.com/ttjourneys. Help us keep the lights on. We'd appreciate it. So
and improve our content.
I mean, that too.
Our Patreons are doing
they are doing
yeoman's work.
So
to help us keep going right now.
So anyway, like I said last time around, or actually at the beginning of this episode too, this is our kind of our takedown on the Monster Manual. Next week we're going to be back. We're going to be reviewing some monsters. The three of us have picked a monster from the book. We're going to be kind of comparing, contrasting its version from 2014, its changes in 2024, and what we think about those changes. So yeah, we will be back next week with that takedown there. So until then, have a fantastic week, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the show. Again, please like, comment. We'd like to go ahead and hear from you, not only about whether or not we should be reviewing Dragon Bait or not, or whatever the heck else you want to see on the show. Yeah, I'm going to stop rambling now. Have a good night. Thank you very much. Good night.
Night all.
Bye.